So sorry for the impromptu technical errors. I believe the technical team is working on that. So, good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar. My name is Georgina Mensah. I am a program assistant at Pax Africa, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session. And so, before we begin, I invite all participants to introduce themselves briefly in the chat or the message section. It's just below. Tell us your name and where you are joining from. And we love seeing the diversity of our audience. So please, let's ensure we put our identity in the chat box. And I want to also specially welcome our speakers and to all of you who have joined us today. The topic of our webinar is data for accountability, how Parliament, organizations, and individuals uses evidence. And in the era, the reason why we are having this meeting is because in an era of increasing demand for transparency and evidence-based decision making, the ability to collect, interpret, and use data effectively has become a cornerstone of accountable governance. Yet, across Africa, the gap between data availability and its practical application in legislative, institutional, and civic processes remains significant. So, this conversation is therefore both timely and necessary. So now we've gotten to the most important section of the meeting, and it's now my pleasure to invite the ACDI representative, Dr. Gifty Adika, to deliver the opening remarks. Dr. Gifty, the floor is yours, please.
Hello, thank you very much. A very good afternoon to all those connected. It's always amazing when we come together to discuss issues like this that can bring about real change and real meaning. I'm representing the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Our mandate, as most of you already know, we strive to work with representative assemblies, especially parliaments, and the objective is that they can be better at what they do. Issues around evidence is critical. I was just reflecting a bit this morning, and I told myself there are several words that have been used over time. We hear words like data, you hear information. There is even monitoring, evaluation, and learning, and then there is evidence. At the heart of this, I think it's the fact that we want to work in a society where we don't take decisions and actions in a vacuum. We want to do things based on reality. In this day and age where we have artificial intelligence and where data has become critical, if you go to advanced countries, land is being grabbed to build centers that will be used for processing data. It even makes it more important for us in Africa, in Ghana, and other parts of Africa to continually think about how do we model these things to fit our real needs as a people in society. So when we talk about institutions, we talk about parliaments, we talk about the ordinary citizen, I think evidence is critical. Those who are researchers know that even though often we use complex statistical things to generate data, which is important, it's become increasingly clear that lived experiences and the reality of diverse groups is also important. And I know that three groups that have come together for this maiden webinar all appreciate that, and it's good that we've come together to dialogue under this maiden program to see how we can transform evidence to action. On behalf of our executive director and then our other partners as well, We would like to welcome you all to this maiden meeting. I hope we all come with fresh ideas, listen, and also share our thoughts as we deliberate for the next 1 hour. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gifty Adika, for those insightful opening remarks. But then we are also taking another opening remarks from Professor Amwate. Professor Amwate, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. So, good afternoon to all of you. So my name is Charles Samwate, the Executive Director of the African Center for Development Impact. ACDI, our mandate is basically to help bridge the gap between supply and demand of evidence. So we train researchers on how to conduct rigorous policy research. And we also engage with policymakers to use the evidence to inform policy decisions. On behalf of ACDI, I want to welcome all of you to the maiden edition of the Evidence for Accountability dialogue. Today's theme, the data for accountability, looking at how organizations and individuals. We are saying that it's not enough to just generate the evidence, it has to be used. And across Africa, I think demand for use of data, evaluations, and other forms of evidence have become very critical. We want to take decisions that are informed by rigorous evidence, so that those policy decisions really address actual needs and not politics, not people's gut feeling, but real evidence on the ground. We are pleased to partner ASEPA and Pax Africa in convening this important conversation. And we sincerely appreciate you are our maiden panelists, and of course our moderator will be sharing their experiences on this. We want to encourage every one of us to be actively involved. We should listen, reflect. I'm sure we'll also have questions, and also opportunity also maybe during the Q&A time to share from your own experiences how evidence has been used to make a real difference. So once again, thank you for joining, and I wish all of us very productive and insightful conversation on evidence use for policy making. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amwate. Thank you so much. And so I will move on to the next thing. It's now my honor to introduce our distinguished speakers. And we have Professor Philip Duku Osei. He is the former Vice Chancellor of SD Domo University of Business and Integrated Development Studies, now the University of Business and Integrated Development Studies. And next on the line is also Miss Sandra Ewa from the Office of Governance and Legal Research Services, Parliament of Ghana. Then Dr. Josephine Watara, Assistant Director of Research Services, Parliament of Uganda. Unfortunately, she's unable to join us for today. Welcome, Professor Osei. You're welcome, Miss Ewa, and we are delighted to have you join us today. So we'll move on to the main discussion on the item, which is structured question and answer with our speakers, and it's 32 minutes for our speakers. So now we'll move on to the next question, and it is on Parliament is expected to scrutinize government performance and hold the executive accountable. From your experience, how does data and other forms of evidence support Parliament in carrying out this oversight role effectively? To you, Ms. Ewa.
Professor is
Uh-huh. Now we can hear you.
That's it. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Wa, we can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think outcome. For instance, high productivity allows community to start get impact. That's annual statistics, performance indicators. Most of the time you realize that indicators not meet the actual expenditures. That is the allocation of resources. And then the actual expenditures do not stand. That is most of the time the ministries, agencies, articles, and funded. Yes. And then members also need data to also monitor MMDA's program against the points. This when the committee on India and that will get funds mission to the someone prison where they realize that the feed of the inmates was only 1.8 Ghana cedis. Later, due to the fact that we had data, we were able to count the new statement the law of the house for the feeding to increase from 1.8 Ghana cedis to 5 cents. So because of data, they argued that the business also need and then the output was so inadequate. The feeding was also congested. So based on this data evidence, the ministry increased their allocation from 1.8 to 5.6. So I think data is very crucial. And then my experience with the health committee is that always we say that the allocation to the health committee is inadequate. But then you just can't say it's inadequate unless we have enough evidence, substances, inadequacy of the past. So most of the time, we use international benchmark or standard to value our case out. For instance, the Abuja Declaration require members to allocate 15% of their allocation to health. So when we are saying that it is, we have to do the calculation to see whether it is up to 15% or it's just wait and most of the time we realize that we do not meet the 15% requirements of the Abuja standards. So data is crucial, analyzing all these things, advocating for increase budget allocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ewa. It seems your line was breaking, and I confirmed from few participants they could hardly hear you. But that brings us to the next question for you. So parliamentary committees often receive large volumes of reports, statistics, research findings, and stakeholder submissions. What type of evidence are most valuable during committee deliberations, budget coordinating, and policy review? How do members and parliamentary staff assess the credibility and quality of the evidence they receive?
Consideration. Of course, one of the evidence is that which is relevant, credible, timely, and the policy issues at any point in time. Yeah, for instance, when we are the budget scrutiny, yeah, the mostly rely on the budget scrutiny, the program-based budgets of the is as well as the outside on the application.
Okay, I think at this point we've lost Miss Ewa. We can barely hear her. I can barely hear you at this point. So I'll move on to the next question that will be to Professor Osei. Yes. Professor Osei, please, are you here? Okay. So the question is, how can ordinary citizens transform statistics and evidence into stories that resonate with communities, policymakers, and the media? Hello, Professor Osei.
Hi, Georgina. I think Professor is still struggling to get in. I don't know. I spoke with him now. He said it's asking that he does a registration all over, so he's registering now.
Okay. Okay. I think that's quite unfortunate. Sorry to our participants for the technical issues and the delays. Still being worked on by our technical team, so please bear with us. We will also try and see if we can. Hello, Miss Ewa, please can you hear me now? Okay, so I think I'll go ahead to acknowledge the presence of some participants here. Yes. So I can see Richard Otu from ACDI. You're welcome. You're welcome. Benedicta from ASEPA and Dr. Gefty Adika, based in Accra, Ghana. That's one of our yeah, and then we have Michael Nyamiche Webu. You're welcome. Kojo Onkran, Research Office, Parliamentary Ghana. You're welcome. Irene Ofori Ajiman, you're welcome. I think that's a great number here. And we have greetings from Uganda. You're welcome. All of you are welcome to this webinar, and we still apologize for the inconvenience at the moment. we ask that you bear with us as we address the issues.
Okay, I think Professor is on. We could engage him.
Okay. Okay. You're welcome, Professor Osei. We lost you for a moment, but we are glad we have you back. And so we were asking the question, I was asking the question how can ordinary citizens transform statistics and evidence into stories that resonate with communities, policymakers, and the media? Professor Osei, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, good morning to the audience, and thank you for the question. Yes, citizens have the zeal and the willingness to join in the accountability agenda of government. Everything that government does is of utmost importance to the citizens. And therefore, over time, as civil society groups have built their capacities, citizens who are also at times independent researchers, they are also advocates, have managed to also improve on their capabilities to be able to contribute to national debates. I am aware that for, let's say, community-based groups and for NGOs at the community level, they have found various innovative ways to hold governments accountable. And I am aware of a program, especially in fact, I'm a Caribbean scholar, and I have examples from there concerning a video recording approach to resolving, let's say, conflicts and crime in particular communities. That communities have used the help from NGOs and other sponsors to train themselves in critical ways in which they can use community videography to tell their own stories about the challenges of governance in their area, and also to follow up on various government programs that they are interested in. So there are very specific examples that I can cite, especially from the Caribbean that I know about, which we are also somehow trying to replicate in Ghanaian universities through a program we call a CONMAT. It's basically a program that is supposed to build the capacities of community
Hello, everyone. I don't know if we've lost Professor Osei, but if you are here and you are active or you can hear, please let me see some thumbs up so I know that it's not from our side, but from Prof. Okay. Okay. I think we will have to move on. Professor Osei. Hello, Professor. This network is very bad. I don't know if we can have Miss Owa now. Miss Ewa, I believe the technical team is still helping her. Miss Ewa, please, if you are here, please let me know by sometimes. We continue to apologize for this inconvenience at the moment. Okay, we have you back. Okay, so our next question is, parliamentary committees often receive large volumes of reports. That is to you, Ms. Ewa. Parliamentary committees often receive large volumes of reports, statistics, research findings, and stakeholder submissions. Which type of evidence are most valuable during committee deliberations, budget scrutiny, and policy review? How do members and parliamentary staff assess the credibility and quality of the evidence they receive? I think this is where we got to before we lost you. So please, the floor is yours now. Hello, Mr. Wa, we can hear you clearly. I think you will have to amplify your voice a bit. It's too far. Your voice is too far.
Okay now. Is it okay now?
Yes. You have to amplify it a bit more so participant can hear you clearly.
Hello.
Okay, hello, we can hear you.
Please, is it okay now?
I'm muting you.
Yes, please. Yes, we can hear you clearly now.
Yeah, the committee received both quantitative and qualitative data, which provides a complete picture of the issue under consideration. Now, the most valuable evidence is that which is relevant, credible, and timely, which is also linked with policy issues. For instance, budget scrutiny. During that period, members consult audited financial accounts, the budget statement, the program-based budget estimate of the MBAs, the Ghana Statistical Service reports, annual reports, among others. This helps the committee to identify fiscal leakages, funding misallocation, and equity gap across demographics. Yeah, but we should also remember that the budget is not only about financials, but it also talks about policy. So it also has its policy aspects. So the policy aspects, the committee normally rely on the following data: citizens' testimony, civil society reports, independent research, field research by authentic sources to complement the ideas of the financial statements as well. They also use evaluation, M&E evaluation as well. So the committee has a lot of information they rely on in its oversight responsibility. Now, assessing the credibility and the quality of these statements, they examine where the information is coming from. That is the information coming from authentic source? Is it verifiable? Are there biases in the data? So they skim through all this to make sure that the evidence is reliable. And actually, they don't need biases, especially most committee non-partisan. When they sit down, they are non-partisan. So they give their views in a very neutral manner. So if the data is not giving the views in the neutral manner, most of the time they don't accept it. And also the timeliness and the relevance of the information is being considered. Is it the case that the data will reach them late? If it reaches them late and it is the best evidence in the world, they can't use it at all. Yeah. Is the evidence also outdated and doesn't reflect current realities? That one too, they are more likely to reject it. Always our speaker say that it should be, the data should be what? Timely, not data which are outmoded and dated back to, let's say, in the 90s, whilst we are in 2026. So all these things are checked by the committee to ensure that their decisions are well informed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Ewa, for that insight. Thank you so much. We'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Lampo. Drawing from ASIPA's experience of working closely with Parliament across the continent, could you share with us how ASEPA has used data and evidence to inform and strengthen the work of Parliament, particularly in the areas of oversight, legislation, and accountability?
Yeah. Good afternoon to you, and then thank you very much, Georgina, for the opportunity. Clearly, ASEPA, over the period of work with parliaments across Africa, we've used all different kinds of data to inform the work of Parliament, focusing on oversight. So, like earlier on, Ms. Owa indicated, we use both data which is quantitative and also data which is qualitative. When we talk of data being qualitative, that is, we talk of data that people's lived experiences support Parliament. So, for example, when Parliament goes on oversight visit to see to what extent a governance program is being implemented, they require both the record data, which can be, which is quantitative, that is data that provides figures, statistics to back their work, as well as citizens' observations, citizens what they see, what they can tell, their perceptions, and their own lived experiences. So, ASEPA, we sort of support MPs using some sort of very tools which are very participatory. For example, one of the very popular tools that MPs actually have used over the period of ASEPA is what they call the community scorecard where MPs go to a community or an area to oversee to what extent government's project is being implemented. Now they engage citizens, which we call the beneficiaries, and get information with regards to how that particular project is being implemented and what are their own experiences, whether it's working well or what can they say, what challenges are they experiencing. And in this quest, they also engage service providers who provide data which is quantitative. That is, what are the government's policies that they are working with, and to what extent those policies have been implemented or not implemented. As well, we from ASEPA have worked with Ghana Statistical Service. Okay, and here we're talking of the government's overarching institution that provides data, ensure quality assurance for data in the country. We work with them to support Parliament to provide data timelessly, data that is reliable, which is realistic, and MPs have trust in that data for their what? Their budget scrutiny, for so that when the budget is being prepared, MPs have the chance to look at information or data that will help them, guide them to pose relevant questions to ministers when they come to Parliament to present, to give an update. So we support MPs to prepare them to come before the House, where MPs can interrogate their policies, their updates. So in this respect, we use both data which is both quantitative and then qualitative to assess, if you will, to carry out oversight work with MPs. And in this regard, ASEPA has got a number of partners that we work with. As a matter of fact, apart from GSL, we also work with a lot of other think tanks, as well as CSOs, partner CSOs, to provide data for MPs in their in terms of budget scrutiny, in terms of seeing assurances, how they being delivered, and many other things that we do with Parliament. So in short, we've used varied tools, as it were, support MPs to do their work. And also, in terms of oversight, sometimes when MPs, so for example, require some kind of data, we develop policy briefs that also guide them in their work. We've worked with parliamentary staff. I'm sure Ms. Ewa will attest to that. To what extent, how MPs can rely on the data that is reliable for, for their engagement with different stakeholders in terms of their oversight work particularly. So I think that's what I should do in brief. I mean, I'm sure maybe there'll be time for more questions and answers, and I'll be able to sort of elaborate on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Lampo, for sharing ASEPA's experience and the practical ways data has been used to strengthen parliamentary work. Professor Mwate, building on that, we would also like to hear from the African Center for Development Impact. Over the years, how has ACDI used data and evidence in its work, and in what ways has it contributed to informing governance, policy, or accountability processes? Over to you, Prof. Amate.
All right. Thank you very much, Gina, for the opportunity. So ACDI, I think one of the gaps we identified quite early is the fact that we appear not to have the technical capacity among our researchers to conduct very rigorous research that policymakers can use to inform policy decisions. And so we have supported over the years training of researchers in evaluations, how to conduct impact evaluations of government programs. We also realize that there is a big gap between the generation and the use, simply because most of the time, the agenda, the research agenda, is not set by the policymakers, but rather the researchers. So we thought we could change this by now engaging with the policymakers to really tell us what research questions they have, what policies do they want to formulate, so that set the agenda for the researchers. And so we have been working with the government through the Office of the President and to the MDAs, the ministries, department, and agencies, where we work with them to identify policies that they want to either review, they want to formulate, and we say that, okay, once we know those policy needs, we then work with researchers to support that process. So over the years, we have conducted very relevant research on government priority programs. Now, when the research is conducted, we also realize that, our researchers write in a way I said they are publishing in academic journals, which, most of the time, they cannot be well understood by the policymakers. So we started now training researchers on how they can write policy briefs so that they can put their policy recommendations in a form that can be easily understood and used by the policymakers. I remember last year we worked with ACDI to train the Ghana Statistical Service, for example. They have been conducting a lot of, they have been collecting a lot of data, but then most of the time it's not processed in a way that can be used. And so we train them on how to develop policy briefs. And I'm happy to say that I think this year they have published about 10 policy briefs through that training. So if you go on their website, you will see that beyond the bulk data you will find in their government statistics, you will also find policy briefs on specific government policy areas. What we also do is that after the evaluations have been done, we now work with the ministries to make sure that those policy recommendations are implemented. And so we have policy dialogue within the ministries. We've had one, for example, with the Ministry of Education, when we did a study on the free SHS, and we engaged with the minister and his team on how those recommendations can be used to review the free SHS bill. In fact, beyond that, we also engage with Parliament. So I remember with the free SHS policy that we evaluated, we went to Parliament, engaged with the Select Committee on Education. It was a bipartisan engagement, and I was surprised about the level of details they wanted to know. They wanted to know, for example, how many schools we visited, who were the respondents, and the methodology that we used. So sometimes we take policymakers for granted, but some of them are also well informed. So if you're a researcher, please make sure that you arm yourself with all the tools, especially on the methodology, because they want to be sure that those policy recommendations are actually informed by a rigorous methodology. So that's the way we have worked over the years, trying to bridge the gap between the needs of policymakers and also researchers, collaborating with the policymakers to conduct research that can feed into policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Prof. Amwati. But I have a follow-up question. Based on your experience, would you advise government or institutions to make decisions only based on evidence, or sometimes one needs to put the evidence away and use experience instead?
Yes,
Prof.
I mean,
Amwati,
okay, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
The evidence, we must realize that evidence will come from different sources. And indeed, even your own lived experience, it's also evidence. So I think we have to realize, in fact, just about 2 weeks ago, we were organizing a training program, together with ACDI and GSS, on what we call data for decision making. we're doing that for parliamentarians. So one of the questions I asked them is, how do you make decisions? And I realized that sometimes they have some unorthodox sources of data. So for instance, they tell us that sometimes they go to the community and engage with, ordinary people. I mean, people you will least expect that they will reach out to them. Some area boys who have so much information about what is happening in the community, and they engage them, and all of that are all part of the ecosystem of evidence that is needed. So the reality is that policymakers don't rely on one source. So Ghana Statistical Service data will be one source. Sometimes they also conduct their own interviews. Yes, they engage with NGOs who are also working in the communities. And it's also good for even triangulation. I mean, we researchers, we do the same. We don't just do surveys. We complement that also with some in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, some direct observations. So we also have our own different sources. And the expectation is that those quantitative and qualitative methodology will reinforce each other so that our recommendations are well grounded. All right, so that's the reality. We want to encourage the use of multiple sources of evidence to inform policy decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Amwati, for sharing ACDI's experience with data over the years. Thank you so much. I believe, participants, we are learning something today, and the chat box is open. Please, if you have any questions, put it in it, and at the appropriate time, we are going to deliberate on that. Thank you very much. So we move on to our next speaker, Professor Osei. Can you please share an example of academic research that directly shaped a policy or legislative outcome? What made that connection between research and decision making possible? Professor Say, please, the platform is yours.
Okay, it appears we still don't have a Professor, but I want to maybe share some experience. For the past, I would say 4 years, we have been working on an interesting project, a government flagship program called, the One Village, One Dam. I'm not sure how many of you heard about that, but it involved government policy to promote dry season farming in northern Ghana, where government intended to build about 600 small dams across the 5 northern regions so that it can improve food security in northern Ghana, increase income of farmers, and yes, improve livelihood in general. Now, because it was a political decision, they got contractors, awarded contracts, and they went into the communities to start constructing the dams. Now, we realized so our evaluation shows that, for example, the siting of the dams, for instance, I mean, the evidence to support the best locations for the dams, we didn't have that evidence. And that was very problematic. So we had cases where the dams were sited in places where maybe there could have been better locations, So that's one aspect. The other aspect was the lack of involvement of the communities in the siting of the dam and also in the construction of the dams. So the contracts were awarded in Accra, and the contractors moved there. They went with their own people to construct the dam. The communities were not really involved as expected. So we realized during our evaluation, we saw that some of the dams were broken, and and so on. And we went to the assemblies and asked them, but if this dam has been constructed and is broken, why don't you fix them? So surprisingly, the assemblies also said that they were not involved in the process of building the dam. And so they didn't feel they own it. I mean, so those were issues. Now, we also realized there were issues with the design of the dam itself. The proper engineering of the dam weren't done. And so most of the dams, after a heavy rain, were washed away. So we did these evaluations. We came back to Accra. We engaged. In fact, we invited people from the presidency, the Ghana Irrigation Authority, Ministry of Agriculture, National Development Planning Commission. So we had all the key institutions come together and we shared the findings with them. And, we realized the findings went quite far because at the time we came in, about 300 of the dams had been constructed. And our evidence shows that they needed to redesign the dams. There was also the need to increase the size of the dams so that they can retain more water. And there were several recommendations that came out of that study. And so the remaining 300, they held on to that. And we saw evidence that the dams were being redesigned and which showed that government had taken into consideration those recommendations we made. So you can imagine those other 300 could have still been built, and today those dams will be nowhere to be found. And so we have seen very good evidence that some of the data we produce are actually informing high-level policy decisions. One of the things that helped us a lot was that we were very much involved in engaging with the policymakers. We did not only conduct the research, but we made sure that the findings reach the policymakers. We had a lot of stakeholder engagement with them to make sure that our findings got to the right doors and that they were actually taken on in their policy decisions. Yeah, so Georgina, that's an example of some of the extra things we need to go as researchers to make sure that we don't just do the research and publish. We must also advocate and push for the implementation of our policy recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was on behalf of Professor Osei for that insightful and academic perspective. Now we'll turn to Miss Sandra Iwa. And the question is, as government increasingly rely on digital technologies, administrative data, and artificial intelligence, how should parliamentary institutions adapt to ensure members continue to have access to timely, credible, and independent evidence for policymaking and oversight? Over to you, Ms. Sandrewa.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, whether we like it or not, AI has come to stay with us. Even though some institutions doubt its credibility and the rest, but it has come to stay. And it is very important to note that it's able to summarize a whole lot of documents in no time. And then the youth nowadays use it a lot. My service persons, for instance, when you give them work, within a twinkle of an eye, they have completed the work. So I wonder. So I used to ask them, so did you use the AI? The answer is yes. But then we have to coach them how to use the AI responsibly. So all the work or the evidence that they have produced, we have to sit down and then cross-check everything. So if it is misleading, then we take it out. Yeah, but if we compare it and it is authentic,
at the human books or sources, then we keep it. So there is no doubt the AI is helping a lot. So what we need to do is to build our capacity in that direction. It can do a lot of analysis within no time. It can compare different data sets. So for me, I will encourage all institutions, particularly Parliament, that receives volumes to now use the emerging tool, that is the AI, and then train ourselves, train our service personnel, train everybody to use it to enhance evidence uptake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Wa, for that. We will continue with our speakers, but before that, I want to remind all participants to please type your questions in the chat or the Q&A box. We will take as many as time allows shortly, and feel free to direct your question to a specific speaker if you wish. That is just a reminder. And we'll continue with our next speaker, Mr. Lampo. I have a question for you, and that is, what skills should students, young professionals, and emerging advocates develop today if they want to become effective champions for evidence-based accountability?
Once again, thank you very much, Georgina, for this very important question. Because as we all agree, students, the youth are the future, they are our future, and therefore they will require very important skills for them to be able to sort of, if you will, engage effectively. And one of the skills that they would need, I would suggest they have skills that is very analytical, able to sort of see a phenomena, analyze it, understand it, and prefer various suggestions as the way to go. So one of the basic skills which is critical for anybody, including the youth of today, the skills to be able to analyze a phenomenon that they will sort of understand and prefer suggestions as the way to go. Oh, clearly, without a doubt, as it has been said, AI is the in thing now. Nobody can really make any progress without the skills of AI. And therefore, if you are not to be left behind, our youth have to really grab the opportunity. That's be grasped and then try to get all the skills that's necessary for so that they can really shape the future. Without AI, as it's been said, they'll be left behind because as we know, technology is evolving very fast. And if you don't really get yourself onto it, then you'll be left behind. And therefore, the youth, if they are to be sort of meaningful, if they are supposed to contribute meaningfully in future, they ought to get some of the critical skills, including AI skills, digital technology skills, skills of able to sort of see issues that have a broad mind as how to approach them, and therefore that will require a lot of skills that's able to sort of understand and read and understand issues that you need to sort of then they can make sort of possible recommendations and suggestions as the way to go. So clearly for me, the youth have to endeavor to work hard, read broadly as possible so that they don't become very myopic and just understand issues at the surface level. They have to be very hardworking, understand the world as it were, so that broaden their horizon, so that whatever is happening with the issue of climate change and how it impacts our very planet and how there's a connection between climate change, let's say in Brazil and Ghana, big interesting question, and therefore you can sort of propose solutions as the way to go about it. So therefore, they have to have a gamut of knowledge with regards to how the world actually works. The youth should not just only be focused on one area. They have to understand how the world works, and therefore, if not how the world works, then you can sort of, if you will, you can really shape it. But once you don't have the necessary skills, knowledge, and sort of how the world works, you'll be you'll be adrift, and therefore you can't really shape the world, take control of the world. So for me, my advice is that the youth should work hard, acquire the requisite skills, including AI skills, without a doubt, including skills just basic to analyze phenomena and understand the world as it were. Therefore, knowing the world, understanding what it is, and how to take control of it, including some of the critical issues of the world today, like climate change and other key issues that are affecting our livelihoods. So they need to have, in essence, they need to have very broad skills that are critical for our modern day world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lampo, for your contribution. Eventually, we are wrapping up, eventually coming to the close of our discussion today. And before that, I want to throw a question to our speakers. In 1 minute, if participants leave this webinar remembering just one lesson about using data for accountability, what should that be? What should the lesson be, actually? To Mr. Lampo.
Must be timely, realistic. Data must be easily to use by the user, by the end user. So it shouldn't be complex. It must be accessible and realistic for any person to use, for that matter, parliamentarians. So make your information very, very usable, friendly, realistic, and time-bound. Data must be realistic and then therefore, and ultimately must be trusted. The source must be trusted for each of you use data. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ewa, please, we would like you to add your voice to it.
Yeah, one thing is that we should embrace AI in parliamentary work so that it will enhance our speed and timeliness of the information to members. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we'll also do justice to also hear from Mr. Mwate.
Okay, so I think the new normal now is co-creation of evidence. So we want to see more collaboration between the policymakers and the researchers to do the research together. And then also the researcher, your work doesn't end by just generating the evidence. You should be able to also advocate for the use of the evidence. So keep pushing until you see your evidence influencing policy decisions at the very highest level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwate. Keep pushing to all the youth on this platform. And we will move on. We are eventually coming to the close. We're already at the close of the session, and there are no questions in the chat box, but I believe we still have questions. So please put in your questions in the chat box. If you want to talk, kindly put your thumb up and I will call you. Kindly feel free to put in your questions in the chat box.
Data for data. Oh, research. Back on the data.
Sandra, you have to mute yourself.
Please kindly mute yourself if you don't have any questions, please. Okay. So I received a question. What makes evidence persuasive enough to influence parliamentary debates and committee decisions? Please, to any of our speaker.
Okay, so I would say that for evidence to be persuasive, that evidence, as I said, must be user-friendly. So, for example, if you have a tick of data figures for an MP to use for policy making, it makes no sense to him or her. So make sure that whatever information you are giving that to that MP or to that MP is user friendly. It could be infographics, it could be graphs, it could be a pie chart. Make it so simple for him or her to understand. That's the first principle of data. It must be user friendly. Also, not be too difficult to understand by the user, that is the MP or the policy maker. And of course, that data must be trusted. If data hasn't got a source that is trusted, it becomes a challenge. And again, data must be relevant to the times. Data might be factual, but if it's outdated, it's of no use. So to make your data persuasive, it must be relevant to the issues of the day. It must be user friendly. It must be uh, relevant to the issues and it must be timely. So that way, I think it can be persuasive to the end user. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll move on to the next question. That will be to Ms. Ewa. For someone who wants to use data to advocate for change, what practical first steps would you recommend?
Yeah, thank you very much. One of the practical steps is to involve those whom you want to convince. Yeah, the stakeholders engagement. If you are able to gather them and then make their input realize in your materials, I believe there will be change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The same question to Prof. Amwate. Please, can you add your voice to, for someone who wants to use data to advocate for change, what practical first steps would you recommend?
Okay, now, thank you. You have to be credible. Yeah, you have to be very credible. So as a researcher, try to be very independent, because most of the time when you present evidence, they want to find out where is the evidence coming from, who is the one behind it. So if you are considered to be very political and all of that, then people begin to question your your recommendations differently. So please sustain the credibility at all times and also engage with the policymakers in advance. Don't wait until you have your findings. Even at the inception of your research, bring them on board, ask for their views, get their input into the process, where it is possible even to make them part of your data collection, where you are working with them to generate the evidence. I think once the results come out, they were part of the process, so uptake becomes much easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are approaching, and thank you very much, Professor Osei, Ms. Ewa, Mr. Lampo, Dr. Amwate, for your rich insights and practical perspective. We are grateful for the time and wisdom you have shared with us today. And so at this point, I will call on Ketchups Atengle to give us the closing remarks.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. It's been an insightful conversation. The very subject matter we have been looking at data being and evidence largely being used for accountability purposes is one that resonates so well. We have had very useful contributions from the different speakers, despite the difficulties that came forth, and looking at perspectives from parliaments, operations, the different institutions like academic institutions and individual contributions, to advance evidence use in our policy and engagement purposes. I think it's been very enriching, and I want to believe everybody who joined the conversation today have benefited largely from that, including my own self. And so the conversation doesn't end here. It's just part of these issues that have been brought up here. These conversations should continue, I believe. If we have experienced some contributions here that we would want to take forward post-session, this is highly encouraged, and I think we will want to do that. Engage people beyond the session to dig deeper into these issues. We had just a very limited time, and for the sake of technological challenges, we couldn't even exhaust everything. So my encouragement would be that we take this conversation beyond these spaces and to see many more collaborations. Let me acknowledge also that this webinar is the first of its kind, and so we should look forward to similar engagements in the coming future. And most importantly, it is the first time that we have the three organizations, ASEPA, ACDI, and Pax Africa collaborating at this level. And so we will want to see many more of these collaborations, even beyond these organizations going on, because the EIDM space is quite a big one, and the challenges we are confronting are huge. We want decisions, especially public policies, being made the conversation. Thank you very much, all panelists, for the rich perspectives. Thank you, Sandra, Ms. Sandra Ewa. Thank you, Professor Osei. I understand Josephine Watera was not able to join because of some emergency situation here she had to handle on her side. We thank Professor Amoate and Isifo Lampo for stepping in as well, sharing those rich contributions to make the conversation a very fruitful one. We want to say, thank you to all participants for making the time as well. And we will look forward to engaging other perspectives of data for accountability issues in the coming sessions. It's a bye from my side now, and enjoy the rest of today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.